"Hey, stop right there! Hands up! You're under arrest for drugs!" The officer's shout cracked through the courthouse parking lot like a whip, splitting the calm of the morning in two. Sirens blared, flashing blue and red lights splashed across concrete walls, and the noise echoed between pillars until it swallowed everything. The quiet hum of the city disappeared. All that remained was chaos. Pedestrians froze. Lawyers clutching their briefcases halted mid-step, their eyes wide. Mothers yanked their children closer. Phones came out, screens glowing like 1,000 watchful eyes ready to record what no one could believe. Gasps rose like a wave when the officer held high a small plastic bag, its white powder glinting in the sunlight. He waved it above his head like a trophy, a declaration of victory before a trial had even begun. And there she stood, a black judge, robed in authority and dignity, now surrounded by armed officers who pointed at her as if she were nothing more than a common criminal. The silence that followed was heavier than the sirens. For years, she had been the one who demanded silence in courtrooms, commanding order with a lift of her hand. Now, the silence turned against her, pressing down, suffocating, and cruel. But before I tell you how this nightmare unfolded, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and comment where you're watching from right now. Because this is not just scandal. It's a war between corruption and truth, and you won't believe how it ends. Her name was Judge Camilla Johnson. She was born in a neighborhood most people never expected to produce greatness. Her mother worked endless double shifts at the hospital, hands raw from labor. Her father preached discipline and honesty from a small pulpit, a man who believed character was the only wealth that mattered. Camilla grew up with hand-me-down clothes, second-hand books, and a fire in her heart that refused to die. While other children played on cracked sidewalks, she studied beneath dim streetlights. She devoured every book she could find, pushing herself to learn, to understand, to dream. Teachers whispered about her brilliance, though many doubted her chances. But Camilla never doubted herself. She carried the weight of generations on her shoulders, determined to prove that brilliance knew no color and dignity knew no boundaries. Years of sacrifice carried her to law school, then to the bar, and finally to the bench. When she was sworn in, she became the first black woman in her district to wear the robe. She ruled with balance and precision. Every ruling, every sentence, every decision reflected not arrogance but fairness. In her courtroom, power meant nothing. Evidence and truth meant everything. But her presence was not welcomed by all. She was a thorn in the side of those who thrived in corruption. Her rulings cost powerful men money, influence, and control. They whispered about her in hallways. They questioned her in closed rooms. And her very existence, a black woman holding power in a courtroom where white men had ruled for centuries, stirred resentment that grew like a shadow. That shadow struck the morning the officer pointed at her and shouted. It began like any other day. The sun climbed slowly over the courthouse roof. Camilla parked her car in the same reserved space she had used for years. She gathered her robe, folded neatly in its bag, and carried her briefcase heavy with notes for a critical case. But then the world erupted. Police cruisers screeched in, tires screaming against pavement, doors slammed, boots thundered. "Stop! Don't move!" The officer's voice boomed. His finger pointed directly at her. He surged forward, brandishing the bag of powder. "Judge Johnson has drugs in her car!" The words detonated like dynamite. The crowd convulsed in disbelief. Lawyers staggered backward. Reporters clicked furiously. Onlookers pressed closer, their gasps sharp, their whispers poisonous. Camilla's pulse roared in her ears. Rage and disbelief wrestled inside her chest. Her car, her courthouse, her mourning, now transformed into a stage for her public destruction. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. A judge? With drugs? Impossible? Or maybe not? Her throat ached with the urge to scream, to shout the truth, to tear through the lies. But something deeper told her to remain silent. Silence could be a shield. Stillness could be strategy. Because what no one knew, not the officer, not the crowd, not even her closest allies, was that Camilla carried a secret. By midday, her face was plastered across every screen. Black judge caught with drugs. Talk shows mocked her. Social media tore her apart. Bloggers labeled her a fraud. Commenters sneered, another hypocrite exposed. The courtroom she had ruled with honor turned its back on her. She was suspended without hesitation, stripped of her robe, marched out of the very building where she had built her career. Colleagues kept their distance. Lawyers she had mentored crossed the street to avoid her. Judges she once sat beside refused to speak her name. Even her own family's eyes brimmed with questions they were too afraid to ask aloud. Humiliation consumed her. Every step outside was agony, every glance a dagger, every whisper another wound. This wasn't accusation. This was character assassination. It wasn't just an attempt to question her integrity. It was an attempt to erase it. But Camilla did not collapse. She endured. Because she had something the world didn't know. Months before, the threats had begun. Anonymous letters slid under her door. Messages left in her mailbox, venom dripping from each word. Midnight phone calls, breaths heavy on the line. Why? Because she had ruled against powerful men who thrived on deceit. She had stripped them of their shields. She had exposed their schemes, and they despised her for it. So she prepared. Camilla had tiny cameras installed in her car, silent, hidden, invisible to the naked eye. They captured every angle, every movement, every intrusion. And when the officer leaned into her car that morning, the cameras caught everything, his hand slipping into his pocket, the bag of powder sliding beneath her seat, the pause, the smirk, the dramatic shout, "Drugs!" The evidence was clear, irrefutable, devastating. But Camilla didn't rush to reveal it. She allowed the storm to rage. She let the humiliation grow. She let the police department bask in false triumph. Because Camilla wanted the entire world to watch her trial. She wanted the eyes of the nation fixed on her when the truth came crashing down like thunder. The trial was a circus. Crowds filled the courthouse steps, protesters clashing, some demanding her resignation, others crying for justice. Reporters swarmed every corner, cameras clicking, microphones stretched forward. Inside, tension dripped like sweat from the walls. The prosecution spun their story with venom. A respected judge by day, a hidden addict by night. They painted her as duplicitous, hypocritical, a woman unfit to sit on the bench. They held up the bag of powder like scripture. The officer testified with ease, his voice steady, his face hardened with practiced sincerity. He described the arrest as routine. He claimed the drugs were undeniable evidence. His lies slithered through the courtroom, poisoning every ear. The jury leaned forward, brows furrowed. The case looked airtight. But then came her turn. Her attorney stood calm as stone and pressed play. The courtroom fell into silence as the footage appeared on the screen. The officer's hand, the pocket, the slide of the bag beneath the seat, the pause, the smirk, and the performance that followed. Gasps tore the air. The jury's faces changed in an instant, suspicion washed away by outrage. Reporters bolted from the room, sprinting to rewrite their headlines. The prosecution sat frozen, their mouths slack with disbelief. The officer's face drained of color. And Camilla? She sat still, calm, silent. She had waited for this moment. She had let them drag her through humiliation so the truth could blaze brighter than ever. And blaze it did. The jury returned quickly. Their verdict was swift. She was acquitted, her name cleared, her dignity restored. But it didn't end there. The officer was arrested, his badge stripped, his career destroyed. Investigations ripped through his department, exposing corruption, lies, planted evidence in case after case. Lawsuits surged like a flood. Careers toppled. The system that tried to bury her was now collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. Weeks later, Camilla returned to her courtroom. The gavel in her hand felt heavier, stronger, more powerful than ever. And when she entered, the entire room rose to their feet. Not because protocol demanded it, but because respect did. The very system that tried to break her was now on its knees. Her story became legend, a lesson whispered in every hallway of power. Truth may be buried for a season, but it always rises. And when it rises, it destroys lies with a force that nothing can withstand. And that is how a cop tried to destroy a black judge, but instead destroyed himself. Judge Camilla's story is more than survival. It is victory. It is warning. It is proof that justice cannot be silenced. If this story shook you, smash that subscribe button right now because the next one, it's even bigger. Stay tuned. Stay strong. And remember this, no matter how dark the night, truth will always bring liars to their knees.